Rehabilitating the worst in tech. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
In defense of also-rans, let's celebrate some vintage tech dead ends.
Managing football like it's 1982. This game did not die of dysentery.
And that settles it. The Amiga gets the Settlers 2, while the Spectrum does some 3D magic.
As well as the end of the Spectrum Next Kickstarter, along with the latest in garage news coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 23rd of August, 2025.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech. Hello,
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Dave.
I'm Jason.
I'm Chris.
How has your week been, guys? Welcome to the show. Hello, twirlers. How's your week been? Jason, what have you done?
How has my week been? My week's been pretty good. You want to know who's getting a Spectrum Next 3?
Yes. Now, Let's set the scene. A few weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, one of us here said they regretted missing out on the Spectrum Next Kickstarter. And then the next week, the Spectrum Next Kickstarter was announced. So that person, of course, of the four of us, that one person of the four of us, would of course be the one that backed it. Chris, that was you. Did you back it?
Look, can I just say, this is my +3. Have you seen how good a condition my +3 is in, right? So the problem is, I'm not sure I need a Spectrum Next at all, Dave.
Did you back it?
I know I said I did feel I missed out, right? I really did feel I missed out. And on the first time they did one, because I wasn't used to Kickstarter and what it was, but let's just move on. Who has backed it? Have you backed it, Dave?
I backed it, yes. And producer Duncan has backed it because of the CPC core. I'm assuming, Jason, you won't have been in North America and you won't know anything about it.
No, so you've got you and Duncan and 7,521 other people and me.
Everyone backed it apart from Chris, the one person who said they were looking forward to backing it.
Do I have to leave the show?
No, it's fine. It's fine. In fact, maybe you're more authentic than us because you'll be using a real old, proper, vintage Spectrum rather than a retro one.
Which will probably die the day after you guys will get your Spectrum.
You can always use an emulator.
Yeah, there's going to be some magic smoke.
or drop the board in. Doesn't it fit in most of the cases? Or?
Yeah, get a board.
There you go.
You mean I could have ordered a board?
Yes.
Yep.
That would have fit in it?
Yes.
Yep. Anyway.
I, on the other hand, have been enjoying a phenomenon called the Summer of Dungeon Master. Dungeon Master is my favourite Atari ST game, available on other platforms as well. My favourite Atari ST channel, The Joy of Sticks, has been doing this thing called the Summer of Dungeon Master, where he started off by reading out the novella and then playing the game that he's not played in a very long time. And he's not the best at it in terms of he's not got the muscle memory back yet and he doesn't remember everything about it. He remembers playing it. So it's almost like watching someone playing it for the first time, which is absolutely magical. He's doing it on YouTube. And that has inspired another one of my favourite channels, Gears of Games, who does a variety of things, including the Atari ST, to do Chaos Strikes Back, which is the sequel to Dungeon Master. So I've been enjoying 2 videos a week from each of these guys, playing it and getting excited about it. Of course, it's led to me playing Dungeon Master. I'll get Duncan to put links into both of these, but I'm absolutely, thoroughly enjoying the Summer of Dungeon Master.
Nice.
Chris, have you done anything? Lost in any competitions?
I am now not winning the 1943 High Score Challenge on OG Duffy's channel. So, yeah, on with the show.
Try putting more coins in. That's the solution for 1943. Just stick more coins in.
That's cheating.
Jonik tipped us off to one of those articles. You know the kind I mean. It's declaring things that are the worst. In this case, quote, 10 of the world's worst ever inventions. And this article was published by BBC science-focused picture editor James Cutmore. Is it clickbait? I mean, Personally, I think this is more one of those post-truth conventions where somebody says this thing is the worst, and we all know that they don't really mean it, but we want to see what the theme of their gripe is going to be. So to be clear, I mean, this is an entertainment article, and it steers clear of topics that you might expect to find in a real worst inventions list, like, oh, I don't know, chemical warfare agents, or radium dial watches, or Pizza Hut Express takeout locations, because as we all know, a Pizza Hut is a restaurant with a distinctive red roof, a dining room, and an arcade machine, preferably Arkanoid, but we will accept other answers. Anyway, the author tips off that he doesn't really expect us to buy into his headline. He even gives away the game in his very first item, which is the fatally flawed parachute coat of 1912, designed by inventor Franz Reichelt, which absolutely failed to help him fly off the Eiffel Tower. Now, Cutmore acknowledges that one can draw a line between its creation and base jump wingsuits, ejector seats, and other modern parachute tech. So, since he was kind enough to give away the game, I thought that we should look through some of those other items and focus on the ones that are kind of retro tech as we understand it. You know, things that turn on or spin or fly or all of the above, and see if we can't find some of the good in there as well. The most obvious next item up, and it was actually the lead image for the story, was the Sinclair C5. Now, as an American, I was completely spared the hype of Sinclair C5 fever. A little while ago on the show,
as we were in Britain as well, because there was no hyper fever about it. You know,
Any hype, it's true.
no.
There was media, though. I mean, there's plenty of photos of Sir Clive earnestly.
The coverage was, look at the state of this.
Yeah. A little while ago on the show, I did talk about my affection for Formula E open-wheel electric car racing. And, you know, I think about the first generation, the first few seasons of Formula E, when I look at some of the C5's, shall we say, impracticalities. You know, those earliest Formula E cars couldn't run at terribly impressive speeds. They only lasted a handful of minutes on a single charge, so drivers were literally swapping to a completely different vehicle halfway through a race. And the C5, you know, electric tricycle and its poor driving range, I mean, that was a product of battery and motor tech at the time, of course. And yeah, Chris.
I want to defend it in that I think he was. It got bashed because he tried to market it as he invented the electric car, which he didn't. But if you look back at it as an e-bike, then I think it shows how far ahead of the game he actually was. That's my take on the C5, and that's my defense of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even then, I don't think the impractical steering position has made its way into, because for those who don't know, it's worth seeing images and really understanding you got your hands under you. Okay, Chris, other things where you got your hands under you to steer?
Well, that too. If you're really into cycling, bikes came out much later, as in only a few years ago, that have exactly that same seating position.
All right.
And they're actually meant to be quite economical, you know, in terms of your energy. So I wouldn't ride one personally, but it's a thing. Yep, it's the thing.
Yeah, all right. I mean, the news keeps getting better for the C5. Despite its impractical / forward-looking steering position, the open to the elements design, and let's call it a generously dangerous profile. I think one of the things it was a stark lesson to Sir Clive specifically, but also to that kind of wave of inventors from the 1970s and early 80s who were able to push through to market success some designs that, we'll say, you know, capital W worked, even if they were fairly hostile to the user. It told us that user experience was really going to matter for the next generations of truly successful tech. And I think some industries took longer to get there than others, but I don't think it's any accident that the successes in hybrid and all electric cars have come by making things that are more or less the form factor of cars that people already wanted to own and drive. You know, nobody particularly feels good about the idea that they've made an expensive and impractical purchase just as an important iteration and milestone on a journey that won't pay off for 15 or 20 years. But I think so it went for the C5. Now, from the mid-'80s to a real turn-of-the-millennium digital trick, I'm going to throw it to Dave, who's going to try to come up with something positive to say about the pop-up browser ad.
Pop-up ads are great. I should say they were great because they don't exist anymore. But if you were on the internet in the late 90s and into the millennium, you will have seen them. They were a super innovative use of JavaScript to cause another browser window to open up with an advert on it, meaning that your browsing window wasn't cluttered with ads. There was further innovation, though. The pop under ad, one that popped up and you might not see till later on. And the last one that I can remember is the exit pop-up ad. When you're finished, you hit the back button that says, well, no, have a pop-up, have an advert. The real innovation, though, and celebration here is that the web came together to decide that we do not want this. Duncan, get the beep out. We do not want this. And pop-up ads were blocked unless we gave the website permission. So this was a collective movement by the internet as a whole, the mainstream internet, and the first one that I can remember to say, no, we want to control what a website can actually do to our browsers. And that was when all of the browsers, even Internet Explorer, got pop-up ad blocking built in, and all of a sudden they were killed off. Of course, now adverts are more prevalent than ever, and they are everywhere in social media. There are posts in social media that are not labeled as adverts, but they are just labeled as normal posts. In fact, they're adverts, and it's got worse than ever. But pop-up ads and the internet's revolution against them is what I think is a great thing.
And for better or worse, as devious or malicious as some of that JavaScript, certainly was, it honestly was probably a way of iterating towards, hey, you like to run applications in your browser? Here you go. Like, I'm looking at Google Docs right now. That's running in a browser window and better than ever. So things like that, for better or worse, did help iterate, HTML5 and so forth.
Yeah.
All right. Also on his list was the Apple Newton. And I know that I've picked on a number of the PDAs of the 1990s that weren't the Scion on the show recently. And frankly, I'm likely to continue to do so. This is a little tricky because the Newton really did absolutely fail to deliver on a lot of his promises. If you were one of the unfortunate faithful who rushed out to get it, you did not make a particularly good investment. But there really is no denying that iterating through those handheld touchscreen and stylus designs of the 1990s and early 2000s, I mean, it really did just help drive the engines of progress, and particularly, I think, really surfaced that pen-first designs simply weren't as convenient as just being able to use a finger, which we did eventually get to with better fuzzy screen capture and so forth. So, Newton, thank you for your service. Also on the list, hydrogen airships. Tough to deny that lighter than air travel took a big L on the Hindenburg. The hydrogen, clearly a mistake. But
highly explosive gas. I mean, why would that be a mistake?
Well, and hang on, because I'm going to come back to that. But airships and lighter than air travel has done just fine in subsequent decades. Blimps and other airships make important contributions to survey work, event videography, photography, and so forth. But yeah, speaking of the highly flammable gas, do you guys remember 20 years ago or so when hydrogen fuel cells for portable electronics were really being hyped up, and it's like, oh no, it'll be a completely clean process and we're definitely not going to get Hindenburg. You guys don't remember this? This was absolutely a thing. And this was like before, the current wave of batteries started getting really good, because you were seeing more mobile tech and a lot of well, this is cool. And we can see that this is more capable technology, but it still only lasts 40 minutes. And there was this idea, oh no, it's going to be hydrogen fuel cells. Dude, no, trust us guys, it's fine. It'll just put off water and carbon dioxide and you won't die. Okay, well, this will come around again. Yeah, Chris.
So you're saying there were batteries that could potentially just catch fire?
That happens occasionally. the spicy pillow and so forth. Yeah, we certainly haven't completely avoided that, but yeah. And then there was the Sega Dreamcast on the list. And I mean, I think we could legit do an hour-long episode of This Week in Retro on the very nice, actually, nature of the Dreamcast.
What would you say the Dreamcast's most influential game was of all time? Let's not go there. We're not going to do Shenmue again.
It's funny. I was just thinking about, remember when Dave said we weren't going to make that a thing? So that's funny. Yeah. As an invention, the Dreamcast wasn't hugely novel. I mean, things like the presence of 4 controller ports, I mean, it had certainly been done going back to Atari 8-bits, but seeing it, ship on a console by default, that was a thing. Modem built in, that was nice. And this was not a situation like the Newton where the Dreamcast didn't do things that they told you it was going to do. It absolutely did the things it said it was going to do. Dreamcast worked, they played games, they played multiplayer games. We do know in hindsight that the optical drives, which were, a generation better than CD-ROM, but not DVDs, yet, we know that those drives have a tendency to go bad just kind of sitting around, but that had nothing to do with why the Dreamcast was a commercial failure. That came years later. Sometimes you hit the market at the wrong time. you don't have enough bells and whistles to turn people's heads. You don't have the right messaging. You don't have the right market support, and you don't win. Like that happens. The section of the article does name check both of the Sega Saturn, and in particular, it name checks the Apple Pippin, and that I would make a case for really being closer to fitting the definition of a lousy invention. Like this was a console that nobody was asking for. I'm sorry. So I don't understand why he didn't just pick on the Pippin or the Saturn and leave the poor, scrappy, but actually quite capable Dreamcast alone. And now finally, Chris, do you have something nice to say about the final entry, the Sony Betamax home video format?
I do. And look, as the article is also quite open in saying, it wasn't terrible. So even though the article states it wasn't a bad invention, it was in fact great, it just wasn't successful, which is why it's on the list. So in my view, the article isn't badly written, it's just terribly titled. Because these aren't bad inventions. Yeah.
Well, I go further. I mean, Betamax was fairly successful. It just didn't happen to be the dominant format that lasted through to the end of the tape era. Like Betamax was good. It excelled at a lot of things. VHS was a good format. It excelled at fewer things, but it was cheaper and the tapes were longer. And those things really mattered when you really need if you're not familiar with what. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to say Tecmo has explained this over the years. The real function of these was time shifting. Was I want to watch my sitcom, I want to watch my soap, I want to watch this later on in the day, and being able to record more in VHS was why it was more successful. The actual quality of the picture wasn't an issue.
It wasn't nearly as important. And some people were doing archiving, like pro wrestling fans would tape, regional programming in the US and trade it around the country. And the idea of I can get 6 episodes on a tape that literally is $15, $20 for blanks. They used to be very expensive, and that's in old money versus, beta where you were getting, 4 and change on the longest format. Like that's a big difference. So people who were buying beta had access to a lot of films for a decent amount of time. Like it's not like beta vanished overnight, as VHS machines came into being.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to own a copy of Ghostbusters, then if you had a choice between VHS and Betamax and nothing else mattered, then Betamax was objectively better.
Sure.
But
I'm just
other things mattered.
On Betamax, I mean, I never got to play with one. I've only done the, Digibeta and stuff like that. Was the pause clearer? Maybe
I think that was also machine.
That was a selling point.
I think that may have been machine dependent, and I don't know if that was a thing that Sony shipped theirs out of the gate with better pause, and then you needed more tech on VHS. We need an expert testimony on that.
I remember my dad's VHS player that he bought with his retirement money. He retired early and bought himself a really, really nice Panasonic thing. When you paused it, you got an absolutely perfect image.
Really?
And that was because there must be some kind of buffering going on there.
More than anything, the platform competition between beta and VHS was absolutely an ongoing positive for the consumer in general. Beta was innovative. It was important. The fact that it didn't win doesn't make it a bad invention by miles. If you wanted to go back, wanted to go after a home video format, something like DivX or those crazy, self-destructing, discs that they were putting out in the early 2000s, things like that were actively bad. Beta doesn't nearly qualify. When I was talking about the Sinclair C5, by the way, I got sidetracked when I was talking about how we didn't get hype in the US. We did eventually get, remainder liquidation inventory. So there is still an enthusiast community here. I have a picture from Bohush Blahut, who some of you might remember from the Vintage Tech Hunters show, of him merrily in his Sinclair C5, which hopefully we can drop into the show right about now. And so, Dave and Chris,
they don't come up over here. The only place I've ever seen one over here is in a museum, literally in a car museum.
Count me out. No chance.
Yeah. So in the spirit of this thing, this article is basically picking on inventions which were actually perfectly fine, but just didn't win their category. Do you guys have any inventions you want to single out and say, oh, this was the worst, by which you really just mean, I'm glad that I can use something better than this today?
I'm not so much. I'm going to take a slightly different slant. I'm going to predict a future version of this article, and I'm going to state that it may include, given they included the Apple Newton in this one, it may include the Apple Vision Pro. Okay. And my reason for that, don't hate me if you're an Apple lover, I own one now. So you can't burn me at the stake. But when everyone else in the VR, AR space has realized that to improve traction, and it still needs traction in the area, right? The device needs to be affordable, it needs to be comfortable, and it needs to be wireless. And that's key. Apple, however, in their usual arrogant way, went with a design that has a cable running down to a backpack and slapped the biggest price tag on it you've ever seen, and then boasted about the features that it has, which for the most part can almost all be done just as well on a Quest 3, which is also the cheapest option on the market and has no wires. So, yeah.
I listen to light entertainment podcasts sometimes to sleep. And one of the things that keep coming up on these is just little snippets of information, bad inventions and so on. And the two worst inventions, I think, of the 20th century are leaded petrol and chlorofluorocarbons, CFC gas, from hairspray and so on that we all use. These are the two worst inventions for the... Took you a second. The worst inventions for the environment in the 20th century. And they were both invented by the same guy, Thomas Midgley Jr. He invented both leaded petrol and CFC gas. He did do lots and lots of inventions, many of which were useful. And unfortunately, and somewhat appealing to my dark sense of humour, he invented he had polio, so he invented a device to get him in and out of bed, and it actually killed him because it malfunctioned and strangled him. So that was maybe the karma he got for CFCs and leaded petrol. He was apologetic. He didn't know at the time they were going to cause the environmental catastrophe that they did, the hole in the ozone layer that we're all worried about. But
a lot of these things, people are just trying to solve problems. Like here's the remit. I want an internal combustion engine. I need to be able to do this. I want to propel this, this gas. So
get rid of the knocking. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Catastrophically bad inventions, both from the same guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say it's the worst, by which I mean I'm glad we have better things now. I'm going to single out green screen and amber monitors, which were completely terrible, especially once you started getting into color computers. A neighbor who I didn't particularly like, and he was stuck with an amber monitor on his Commodore 64. So I'm like, good, serves you right, buddy. Anybody want to defend green and amber monitor?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Yes. If you want to use a CRT to play text adventures, then use a green or an amber one, because the display is much nicer, it's much more pleasant in your eyes, and there really is a nostalgic appeal, particularly for some reason to amber, if it's a nice bright one, to that glow you get from an amber screen. And you don't get it from a colour monitor doing amber, it needs to be a monochrome one. But obviously, a Commodore 64 and amber screen versus a colour, you take the colour every day. I got a PCW, an Amstrad PCW, and when I have the space to fully take it apart safely without the cats getting into it and leave it there for a few days while I work out what to do, which is not now, I'm going to refurbish it, replace the drives. You need to expose the CRT to replace the drives, and I'm going to use it for playing text adventures on it. It's a lovely green CRT for that, and it's ideal for that. But yeah, I get the point. I'm not really arguing with you. I just think they have a niche now for me. These articles, they feel like the first 10 things the author thought of, and then inserting the Dreamcast for people to come and say, no, the Dreamcast was great. But the author acknowledges that as well. It's just a bit of fun. I'm not going to have a go at the author here. This is a bit of a clickbaity, fun article, light entertainment, but it's nice. It gives us a chat about these things. So I enjoy these articles.
Yeah, the one I found really interesting was the parachute coat, funnily enough. I mean, it does look completely ridiculous when you look at the image of it, right? Because it was designed for pilots, and there's no way you're going to fit into a cockpit wearing this thing as the way it's presented anyway. But the sad thing is, obviously, the inventor died trying his own work, which to me means he had a lot of faith that it would work, right? He'd done the design, he'd put the time in, and it killed him. So, that's quite sad.
I enjoyed standing up for the unfairly maligned. I mean, inventions are not guaranteed to be good or good for you, but the process of invention is hugely important, even if the products it creates, fail to be the shiniest object in the sky.
We are sponsored this week by Pixel Addict Magazine. Pixel Addict Magazine is available at addict.media. It is a 6-weekly, I believe, magazine, which covers not just games, but all sorts of things in it. And Jason, you were having a look at something, weren't you?
Yeah, back in the day when you wanted to kick down the door at your tech magazine of choice, sometimes you had to, look down the masthead and figure out, well, which editor might do the assigning? Who do I need to talk to? What might their phone number be? Well, Attic Magazines has just a nice, clear Writers Wanted link here. So if you're interested in getting in print, which I got to tell you is pretty cool, they tell you all about their submission formats. They not surprisingly, are looking for a Microsoft Word and open document formats these days, about 600 words per page. They tell you what to expect in terms of length. They tell you what they're looking for images, what the editing process is going to be like. I did like the note here. All articles should be written in British English, and they go on to kind of give you the sense of, they're looking for that little bit of lighthearted, vibe that characterized the 8-bit micro magazines and 16 bits of the 80s and 90s. So yeah, if you want to help the Attic magazines keep fresh, interesting content coming along, again, tell you from experience, having a new voices helps spark up the content of a publication. So if you've ever been interested in giving it a shot, take a look at what Attic magazine is looking for and get in touch with them.
Chris, you've written for Attic magazine, haven't you?
I have, both Amiga and Pixel, and it's really good fun. Like Jason said, you did well. I don't get over the fact that I'm in print. And in fact, when I was in the WA Smiths on my last UK trip, I showed one of the staff. I said, I'm in this magazine because I had to tell someone. And then my sister bought a copy. She's not into retro tech at all, and she had to buy a copy because she thought it was the coolest thing ever. Yeah.
You too can buy a copy. I like what I did there.
Oh, that's good.
You too can buy a copy of Pixel Attic by going to the website, ordering it. You can have it as a PDF. You can have it shoved through your letterbox and hold it in your hand. Thank you for sponsoring us, Pixel Attic magazine. Perhaps because former host Neil sees Kevin Toms as a hero, he's also a hero in my mind. Mr. Toms pioneered one of the biggest and most lucrative genres in gaming, and he did it way back at the start of the 80s on initially a small scale that is now absolutely massive. Even Football Manager, that's the game we're talking about, isn't a unique concept. At its heart, it is a business simulation game. Not anymore, it's not, but it was at its heart then. I've done a bit of digging, and back in 1964, the first business sim is believed to be the Sumerian game, a game which puts you in charge of an ancient Sumerian city, allocating resources, trying to feed your people, and deal with thieves. And the one I think of most is Yellow River Kingdom, which is a BBC micro conversion of the mainframe game Hamubarai, which is a sequel to, or a port, or a derivative of the Sumerian game. And it came on the welcome tape for the BBC Micro, so it was very well played. Lots of people had this game. And I think in North America, the most prolific was down to 2 games, Mule, or probably one of the most famous games for Americans of a certain age, the Oregon Trail. But as I didn't grow up in America, Jason, what did you grow up with? Were these both big games? Was one bigger than the other?
Well, I mean, Mule is famous for being the game that everybody has played, but nobody actually bought. Like it was a game that grew in appreciation, through pirated copies or after it had been remaindered and things like that. Whereas Oregon Trail, started out as a free game, but as most notably MECC, really productized it and made it flashy. Yeah, it sold gazillion copies to schools and homes alike. From the more that classic side like Hammurabi and so forth, Lemonade Stand was a pretty big deal in the U.S. You see a lot of that. So kind of between Oregon Trail and Lemonade Stand, those are probably the simulation games that you'd see most kids of the era knowing about. And we had sports league simulation games, but the mainstream, at least mainstream in the micro market popularity of things like Football Manager absolutely floored me when I started reading UK magazines. Like, we had those games, but they were fairly niche marketed. You'd maybe see small box out ads or little classifieds for them in the back of the mainstream publications. I was astonished when I started seeing splashy full color ads for Football Manager and its clones and inheritors and so forth. I could not believe there was a big enough market to sustain that sort of thing, but oh yes, there was.
And there still is. It's still absolutely massive. It's one of the biggest PC games. People spend months playing it. However, most of the games I've talked about so far are free or educational focused games. It wasn't lemonade stand that we had here; it was ice cream stand for the seaside, because the seaside is what we all aspire to. In the
I did wonder if there was a little bit of a cultural switch on that. Yeah.
However, I would still strongly say that these games are fascinating, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing them and then working out how to beat the algorithms within them. But eventually we got something a bit deeper than those, and that's where Kevin Toms comes in. If you go to the official This Week in Retro Discord, you'll be greeted by Kevin Toms himself, who will read out the Discord rules. And I know that sounds like an absurd lie, but it's true. It's just a fact. If you go there, you can watch Kevin Toms. Now, today's story was submitted by Nick Farley. It's a Guardian interview with him. So in 1982, he started selling a game called Football Manager by mail order only, a text-only game for the ZX81, and released at the same time for the TRS-80. He developed it on a clone of the TRS-80, the Video Genie, and he created a software label called Addictive Games. Now, that was clearly a premonition, because while Football Manager was a game you would play a bit, or maybe a lot, the current Football Manager is people play that for months in a game. The game was popular enough to get a commercial release and then ports to nearly every system and enhancements along the way. I think the last versions were for the ST and Amiga in 1987. Once it had been ported everywhere, Football Manager 2 was then released in 1988, and then finally World Cup Edition in 1990. They were commercially sensitive. Sensitive? They were commercially successful. Maybe they were commercially sensitive. I don't know even what
that's
that
what happens when you get overstimulated. You get commercially sensitive.
It is football after all.
Yeah, commercially successful. Not to the level of the original, but that isn't criticism of them. It would be incredibly difficult because of the phenomenon it was. And that might have been the end for Football Manager, but it wasn't. And it's kind of complicated how it's come back as a sort of mythical hydra. In 1992, two brothers, Paul and Oliver Collier, created a game called Championship Manager for the ST and Amiga, and really shortly afterwards the PC. It was much, much more in depth than Football Manager. This was them clearly taking the original 1982 idea and saying, how do we make this for 1992, 10 years later? They had massive databases of players and teams and much more in-depth simulation going on. They created a company called Sports Interactive and teamed up with IDOS for 12 releases of a phenomenally successful series up to 2003. So over about 11 years, they did 12 releases. The final one being Championship Manager, 03-04, I think it was. And for those of you unaware, these games have soaked up hours to rival games of Civilization. It feels like playing Civilization, in fact. And it's that kind of gameplay. Just one more game. I want to see what effect this has. I'll make this change, then I'll see what it does. One more game, and it's 3 a.m. and you go work tomorrow. Now, they split in 2003 from IDOS, apparently in acrimony. And IDOS got to keep the name Championship Manager, and they kept releasing it. And that's where something happened to keep this story relevant. Sports Interactive bought the rights to call the game Football Manager. So the last release of IDOS Championship Manager was in 2010, because that kind of died off. And they went on to, well, that's the last release on PC. They went on to mobile games and so on. But Football Manager, reborn as the hat that Championship Manager wore under Sports Interactive, has continued. It has released, in fact, like all the other big sports game franchises like Madden and FIFA and so on, until they dropped the license, every year without fail, apart from, for some reason, this year, 2025. But it will be back for 2026 with a new engine. I think that means the 2026 game is this year. Addictive is the word. I played it loads and I'm scared to play it again. So guys, do you play sports games, Sims, or do you even play business Sims these days? Chris?
I'm really not into manager or sports manager games, but I don't mind games that have an element of it, if that makes sense. So probably my favourite example would be Speedball 2, that has an element of team management at just the right level and it doesn't get in the way of the action. So I'd rather be controlling players than controlling a team. And I'm just not very good at asset management in games, which is why I'm rubbish at some of my favorite games. Carrier Command and Armageddon spring to mind, which, success is, it's all about the asset management, and I just want to fly things and shoot at things. It's kind of ironic that I've ended up in life in middle management, and probably why I sometimes struggle to get out of bed on a Monday morning, because I've just realized that my life has essentially turned into my least favorite type of game.
Aw.
That's why I have hobbies. That's why I have hobbies.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, on that note. Yeah, I mean, if there's a business, if we're going to call it a business sim, I do really enjoy Mule. And if you have never had a chance to play it, I mean, against 3 computer players, it's fine. The more human players you can get involved in a game of Mule, if you don't know, it's about colonizing a far-off alien world. You get 12 rounds, essentially 12 months to decide what resources you're going to develop. There are random events. It's tons and tons of fun. There's an auction sequence that is way more fun than an auction has any business being. So definitely worth checking out. All the talk of sports sims was reminding me that although I didn't actually have it installed, I played a lot of Front Page Sports Football, which was an American football management and league simulator that people used to run fantasy leagues. And I'm sure there's still some active ones out there. You do roster development and training camps and stuff like that to simulate a season or a series of seasons. It is nothing at all like the mega money industry that is called fantasy football in the U.S. now, which is based on real player stats, rather than being a simulated league.
Yeah, we do a fantasy football, although it's the different football than you call football over here. But it's huge. Whenever I've been in the States, I've been astounded by just how much money and advertising there is going on about fantasy football. There must be huge amounts of money. It's like here, it's just a game where the main appeal of fantasy football in the UK is trying to pick an offensive name for your team that slips through.
Yeah, it's been shocking how popular it's become in the 21st century. It had always been a thing, but it was mostly a very, very niche thing until it just exploded into the mainstream. But yeah, I played Front Page Sports Football for years in what was called the Fantasy World League, which was based on the World League of American Football. I was not very good at it, despite years and years of trying to play it. American gamers have kind of been, introduced through the back door to complex sports management in the 21st century because things like Madden and NCAA football have complex team and roster management. In some cases, you can simulate seasons where a team gets an offer to move to a new city for more money and change their logos and so forth. This is just a glorified spreadsheet that didn't so much catch on here. I would certainly play more management sims like Rockstar Eat My Hamster, which we brought up from time to time. That's probably my pinnacle of the genre, which I think is fantastic.
It's such good fun. And the Rockstar Eat My Hamster, that's the type of names that you would be putting into your fantasy football team here. I'd say a few out, but I can't think of any off the top of my head that I'd want to say out loud on Undergate broadcast. Anyone who has been paying attention will remember that earlier on I said Hydra. And that's because Football Manager is back as the hat-on championship manager. But it's also back because Kevin Toms has produced his own spiritual successor to his own game, and he's called it Football Star Manager. It's on Steam. The reviews are good, although it doesn't seem to be getting a lot of attention, but the reviews are good so far. And it's very much retro-themed. A common complaint about the modern games is that they're far too involved. I mean, they really, the distance they've gone in depth between the original Football Manager and this is incredible. So he's gone back to the bones of it without microtransactions. So the core thrill of Football Manager is there, which is start the game, make a few changes, and then watch the game unfold over the space of a minute or two in front of you to see if it actually works the way you want, and then try and fix it. Link in the show notes if you want to get involved. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke about the game Temple of Elemental Evil and the disappearance of the Greyhawk campaign from D&D. And I don't know why, but I completely forgot to mention another campaign setting, Kryn, which is where Dragonlance come from, that also vanished. And then, lo and behold, a video appears on my feed that properly explains why. It's an interesting watch for anyone interested in it. it's one of these videos that seems to be have interest well beyond the little sphere of the creators and intent. It's going great on YouTube, so I've linked it there. It's a fascinating video if you've got any interest at all.
And also, apparently, the Spectrum Next Kickstarter has ended. I don't know if we discussed this before.
Finished a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 1,000% funded, apparently, according to a notification, and it went out to backers, I believe, Jason?
Yeah, I can only imagine how many more they might have sold if they'd ever updated the specnext.com website, which if you visited there, the most recent news article was, there's new Kickstarter news coming soon. I'm like, are you for real? You had to
really?
kind of know to dig into Kickstarter to find it. So, I mean,
that's
good on them for... Yeah.
One more. That's how many they sold. One more.
One more.
They sold 7,500 more. That's bigger than issue 1 and 2 combined. So this is the biggest. This was what they thought would be a clear up, a kind of an extra run of them for the people that missed out, but they've sold more than they did in the first 2 runs combined. A phenomenal success in the Kickstarter. Congratulations. It's just nice to see something succeed. And I hope it kickstarts more development. Hope it kickstarts more development of Spectrum Next stuff. Most upvoted story this week, and indeed for a long time it's been bubbling away, is that MasterCard have seemingly forced Steam to delist adult content. I've been following this a bit, and it's definitely not a retro thing, although I suppose it could eventually affect retro games if they're deemed to be included in this. And it does also affect GOG.com and itch.io. And I don't think anyone wants MasterCard and Visa to be the people that decide what games have artistic merit and which don't. But it's not something we're going to go into here. We tried to work out how to give a summary, but we thought the more we say, the more we need to say, and then it would turn into a full story. And it's not a retro thing that we're going to cover, but it is an interesting thing, I guess. And there's certainly stuff to read about it. There's a link to the video that was submitted. I've not watched that particular video, but I certainly read lots of stuff about it. But we won't say any more about it. On to other news and brief. A video from Matt at TME Retro on a barn full of retro stuff in a heap found in a farm. And that's the first bit of garage news this week.
And also Laserdisc emulation. Pajako links us to an article on time extension on emulation of the Mega LD add-on for the Sega Mega Drive.
And there's a new implementation of Lemmings coming for the Commodore 64. Thanks to Southern Grass for linking us to that on the subreddit. We'll see how this develops. There's Lemmings on the 64 already, but there's some interesting new developments there.
Dr. Local links us to an article on 20 SACD albums not to be missed. And SACD could have been one of the innovations in that list earlier on. Super audio CDs were a much more data-dense implementation of a compact disc, so you could get better sound from a CD, but also if you stuck them into a normal CD player, I believe they just sounded like a normal CD. But they didn't really they caught on a bit in Japan, but they didn't really catch on. But these days, they're sought after by audiophiles, because if you've got a favourite album, well, why wouldn't you want to hear it a bit better sounding on SACD?
And also, I believe somebody's tiled their garage floor. I guess this would be the second garage story.
Yes.
With Jet Set Willie. Is that right? Is that what's been shared by...
A massive black and white Willie.
Shared with us by Demographic.
And if you haven't got enough FPGA re-implementation news, there's a monthly news digest by one of the Mega 65 steering committee members. And in the August news digest, it covers a lot of things, events that Mega 65 has been at recently, where they're going to be at next, some project updates. So we'll link you to that as well. Dan Sanderson is the project member that puts that together.
I hope that the Mega 65 and C64U end up somewhere unified somehow. I'm not convinced it'll happen, though.
We shall see. And if it does happen, you'll let us know about it where, Chris?
At reddit.com/r/This Week in Retro.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Look how smooth we are.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was meant to say, what? Oh, it's me again. What? Where? The one with the R.
Patrons this week should expect to see the pictures we promised should have been out by the time pictures we haven't taken yet, time travel going on here, will be out.
Say more about these pictures we promised.
Yeah, we did promise. Yeah.
We did. Yes, you will have had them already announced to you in your feed by time you see this, if you're a patron, which we do appreciate.
We've had some great stories recently about modern games development for old platforms we love, and I'm going to cover two more today as they both deserve exposure. First up is a much-deserved port for the mighty Amiga, and I'll unpack what I mean by mighty when we get to the minimum requirements for this one. The Settlers, a building and strategy game by Volker Verdisch, I believe that's how you pronounce it, was originally created in 1993 for the Amiga and ported to DOS PC a year later. Its sequel, The Settlers 2, didn't surface until 1996, and despite me correctly stating in past episodes that the Amiga was still very much alive in the mid-90s, it still makes sense that Settlers 2 was only for PC, and in 1997 for the Mac as well. And oddly, for the Nintendo Wii in, I think it was 2007. Well, Pajako6502 links us to a story on gamingretro.co.uk, which details that Settlers 2 has finally been developed for the Amiga. Note I did not say ported. This apparently is a ground-up Amiga-specific title. Now, keep in mind that the original came out in 1996, and I say that as it's time to talk about those minimum specification requirements. You will need, at the very least, a period-correct AGA Amiga, if not a PowerPC one, and you'll also need a 68040 at 40 megahertz with 32 meg of fast RAM, Amiga OS 3.1, AHI 4.18, and 600 megabytes of free hard drive space. Now, just to compare, that's not too dissimilar to the original PC version requirements of a 486 DX2, 8 meg of RAM, okay, that's quite a big difference, and 35 meg of hard drive space free. Keeping in mind that that was a CD-ROM based title, so the capacity of the CD-ROM is why the Amiga version needs more install space. It's not running from a CD, it's running from the hard drive.
Chris, I think that because graphics cards are supported, if you do have an ECS Amiga, if you've got a souped up, 2000, 3000, whatever, I think you can also play it if you meet all the other specs.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So it's AGA or better, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And so point being here is this is what I would call a period correct game for the Amiga. And just as we were used to reading the minimum specs required for any given PC game at that time, if the Amiga had been more alive and kicking in the same period, I believe we would have indeed suffered the same fate. Amiga gamers would not only be adding a new Amiga game to our Christmas lists, but we'd also be budgeting for the needed upgrades to run it, just like we did and we still do for PC gaming. In 1996-97, I was rocking a Pentium 100, for example, with 24 meg of RAM, and some games still ran slow until I got into upgrading graphics cards and then into 3DFX goodness. The Amiga release of Settlers 2 has been developed in Germany by lookbehindyu.de and is available on their website for pre-order in both digital and big box releases. And it's a fully licensed title with the legal blessings of Ubisoft, who now own Blue Byte Software, who were the original publishers of the franchise. And quite fittingly, it officially launches on the 18th of October at the Amiga 40th event in Germany. So, Jason, were you into the Settlers franchise at any point, and do you have an Amiga that could actually play this?
Yeah, I did play a bit of Settlers. Guys, have I fallen into a parallel universe or something? I thought it was kind of acknowledged that the board game Settlers of Catan was inspired in some way by the computer game, and I would say to people Chris, am I crazy?
I have only one thing to say. When somebody says Settlers of Catan, I have never won a game of Settlers of Catan. Carry on.
I really thought that this was understood to be a thing, when the board game started getting popular. And of course, in the US, nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. But I always say like the old Amiga game. And I eventually stopped saying it when they just looked at me funny. But in searching around, I'm not finding connections now. And I don't know if this has been memory hold or if I've crossed parallel universes again or what. As for spec, I will give, can I play this game on a machine I own? I'll give a cautious and tentative yes, as I have a 1200 that has an 060 card. I have a 4000 Tower that has an 060 and PowerPC board and a graphics card in it. However, they haven't been fired up in a while, so anything's possible. So, the hardware's sitting there. Does it still work? That's a bit of a question. To your point, it really is quite high spec by Amiga standards. And certainly if this game had, shipped in 96 or whatever with that sticker requirements, it would have sold quite poorly at that time.
I really used to love these types of games. Megalomania, Settlers, Civilization, all the rest of them. They were one of my staple types of games, as well as adventures and RPGs. But something happened when I played Civ 5, Civilization 5, and it finally quenched my appetite for them. I haven't really played them a lot since, although I still go back to Alpha Centauri. It's years since I've played Settlers, though, and I can't tell you if I played Settlers or Settlers 2. I can't remember which of the two it was. Maybe it was both of them. These are German games, and there's a certain feel to the German strategy games. There's quite a few that are about Anno and something or other, which is a trading game. Really played that a lot as well. They're really good games, and they've got a feeling to them you don't get in other games quite the same. But I do have a gripe about the Settlers that I'm going to mention every time I can. It's about Moby Games. If you search for the Settlers on Moby Games, you won't find it, because Moby Games has decided this game is called Surf City Life is Feudal, which was the American release of it. So they've decided you can't search for it by Settlers. If you search for it by Settlers, you'll see all the other Settlers games first. I'm trying to work out, where is this game? Did it even exist? Yes, you have to search for Surf City Life is Feudal. It does say it's also known as Die Settler and the Settlers, etc., but you can't find it by there. So Moby Games, such an annoying aspect of such a wonderfully useful resource. That's my gripe out of the way. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad this has come to the Amiga. It's a nice thing for the Amiga to get for Amiga 40. It's a proper Amiga heritage game. This is an Amiga game. It's a real shame it didn't come out for the Amiga. Settlers 2 didn't come out for the Amiga. It belongs there, I feel, because that's where the heritage of the game started. Maybe if it was just a year earlier, it might have made it out. But by 1996, Amiga owners weren't that numerous and weren't really paying for games.
That's true. And of course, if you don't have an Amiga that grunty, then of course you could use emulation, or maybe even your A500 Mini would get away with it. The other games development news I wanted to squeeze in here does not require anything close to a fully loaded AGA Amiga. But you guys may want to get it for your Spectrum Nexts when they arrive. Be a nice game to play on it. Although you can run it on any 128K Spectrum, so you don't actually need a Next. And this is what makes it amazing, because it's a fully 3D rotating platformer called Cubix, developed by Gogan as part of the YRGB 2025 coding competition. At first look, it looks like a very smooth 2D platformer, and then the level fully rotates seemingly in 3D. There are details on time extension where Gogan openly states that it's a trick, of course, that really it's 2D, but he gives the illusion through the graphics of level rotation. But that doesn't matter. It works, and it's so smooth. It's fantastic. Reddit user The Real Mr. Buzzy made us aware of this, and it's a stunning piece of work. Cubix is available to download from yrgb.org website, along with many other entries from this year's competition. So there you go, guys. You can all play that on your Spectrum Next while I sit and play it on my Pristine Plus 3 or in emulation, or maybe on my Spectrum Next when it arrives.
Have you backed it?
Yeah.
Yes! Oh, well done, Chris. Well done.
I did it on Saturday, mate.
Oh, well done. I've been nagging him on Discord saying, because I've not been nagging him because I really want him to get it. I've been nagging him because I thought, I don't want Chris feeling he's missed out, and I don't want him to be told something and then afterwards to regret it. So I've been nagging him just to say, look, just to let you know, you absolute beast.
Look. My reasons for holding off, and I was so toing and froing because I genuinely was like, well, my nostalgia is here, but also at some point this may fail. That doesn't worry me too much because I've got Spectaculator, but I've seen the original Next in the flesh, and it is such a product. It's unlike most other things that I've come across in this hobby.
But
the Mega 65
Spectrum,
would be the other one that I hold in high regard.
But it's very Spectrum. It does look like a Spectrum. It's new and old at the same time.
Yeah, and you got the joystick ports and everything. It's just so well done. It's a beautiful machine. Yeah. So yes. Hopefully it arrives by Christmas.
Congratulations. You absolutely did us. Congratulations. Well done. And that's the end. The end of the show. I think we'll go on now to our community question of the week, which was shout out your favourite retro shop or location, even if it's just a preferred eBay seller or a brick and mortar store full of nostalgic gems. Give them some exposure and make sure they're on the retro directory as well. Chris, did you do your homework?
I backed the Spectrum Next.
I would say one thing at a time.
One thing at a time, Dave.
So coming out of contest mode, the top answer is Chris. Let me get it right this time for a change. Christoph, why do you? Super Potato, Akihabara, Tokyo, which is not how you pronounce it, but I got his name right. It's a wonder. Sure, it can be pricey, but it's a joy to behold all those wondrous games in great condition, all under one roof. Beep, which is also the store name, also in Akihabara. If you're more of a computer fan, also the hard off near me, they usually have belters in the junk bins. That's a massive, massive retro market in Tokyo, which is kind of fabled. It's a place that retro fans, anytime they go to Tokyo, will do a pilgrimage to and then complain it's not as cheap as what they'd like it to be.
Colin, the activist, says the Cave Shop, and he makes a point of saying not affiliated or sponsored. So the Cave Shop is good.
In shilling news, they are trying to get out as many multi-system 2 out the door. They started early. People are going to be receiving them soon.
And you can get a 2025 edition This Week in Retro mug from the Cave Shop as well.
Oh, yeah. Tea tastes better out of it.
Tech Made Easy UK gives a shout out to Geekenspiel with faithful reproductions of case badges and stickers. No retro build is complete without them.
There's lots there. The Forgotten Worlds in Stewarton, Ayrshire, Scotland from Generation Pixel. Says there's no one else quite like it in Scotland. Both hardware and software across the decades and all around the world. If Dave hasn't been there yet, shame on you. I have, but not for long and many years ago.
Yeah.
A couple of North American examples here. The Venesaria gives us a mention of Re-PC in Seattle and Tukwila. Been going there for years and years, finding amazing old computer parts, software, CRTs, other retro goodness. And Tyrone the Titan mentions Dark Matter Toys and Collectibles in St. Thomas, Ontario, Canada. Small shop I go to if I need any game, system, or toy over 25 years old.
Cool.
I like the name Dark.
Yeah, go on, Dave.
I like the name Dark Matter. I also like the name Forgotten Worlds. I think that's a great name. Very evocative of what you're going to find in there, but Dark Matter too. Sorry, Chris.
No, that's Australia. There's a couple of Australian ones in there as well. So Gregoriou says the Gamesman in Sydney, Australia. And he goes on to mention, as I've mentioned before, that we don't have a lot of retro shops here. So he's glad that they are still going. I'll have to check out that website, actually. And I do know there was another one by It's My Thyroid, who mentions Beyond Retro in Morley, which I also mentioned last week. So Beyond Retro in Morley, Western Australia, they always strive to outdo eBay and often bring back cool things from Japan. And he said it, which I didn't know this. I knew this shop exists, but he said, incidentally, Over the Road was the second last Blockbuster Video, and now there's just the one left in Bend in Oregon. Yeah, I did find out about that store just as it closed. So, yeah.
So the question of the week for this week, what tech invention are you glad that we no longer have to use? Where will people go to do that answer? English? Speak it, maybe a bit.
They will go to reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro. We always have the current community question of the week pinned to the top.
Thank you. And ignoring my accidental Yoda impression, thank you for joining us this week. We will see you next week for more of the same. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I'm waving. They're waving.
We're all waving.
Everybody's waving.
Bye.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.